you can't just come in the house without a...
We have to control this situation.
Do you have a search warrant?
We don't need a search warrant.
Yes, you do.
You might want to go to school and learn the law.
I already know the law.
No, you don't.
Being a police officer often gives someone a sense of power and seniority. However, these corrupt officers found themselves in trouble when they met teenagers who were more knowledgeable than them. The only solution? Go back to class because you've been schooled. Let's take a look at some of these cases. This police officer got mad when a citizen flipped the bird at him. On May 28, 2022, a teenager was walking on the side of the road when a police car approached him. The police officer in the car, Sergeant Pritch, started calling after the teen, claiming that he showed him the middle finger. The teen did not refute the allegation, but he knew that it was not a crime to curse at police officers, so he continued walking. Angry, Pritch followed the teen for having been flipped off. The teen maintained that he was well within his rights and that unless the officer was arresting him, he would continue walking. Pritch grabbed the teen and detained him.
That's not a crime!
Yes, it is.
Says who?
Says me.
Says who?
Turn around. Come on.
Bro, that is not a crime.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Why are you cursing me?
It's not a crime.
The teen started screaming, so Pritch violated several laws and turned off his body cam until backup arrived. When the other officer was informed what had happened, he insisted that the teen had violated a legal order that required one to stop when ordered by a cop. The teen insisted that such an order had not been made. He went on to cite several laws that were being violated, including his First and Fourth Amendment rights.
Okay, I'm gonna need all of your badge numbers.
I will give you everything written down on a card. What is your
I
name?
can give you...
If you have an ID, that's perfect.
Okay.
Eventually, the police officers let the teen go after he threatened to sue them. The teen threw one last insult at the officers and walked off. It is not illegal to shout profanities at police officers. Some just have an ego that deflates quickly. On September 29, 2019, police officers received a distressing call regarding an argument. One of the parties, Michael Franchek, is said to have a weapon. However, when they arrived at the scene, they had no idea that this might be the last time they called themselves the Boys in Blue. When they got to the house, Michael cooperated and then walked back into his house. To his shock, the police officers followed him inside and tried wrestling with him so he could come out. The Fourth Amendment protects a citizen's privacy, and this constitutes the right to be safe in your house. Police officers cannot step inside your house without a warrant or exigent factors. These officers even tased Michael, adding to their list of violations. Luckily, Michael's 15-year-old boy Jack was around and was recording the entire occurrence. Jack explained the whole scenario, saying that the neighbor had threatened to beat him for riding his gas bicycle around. He also had a permit for the bicycle. There were 2 witnesses who knew that no weapon was involved.
So there's no reason why he says a gun is involved.
It wasn't him that said it. He doesn't even know about this. This was a completely other parties that were watching the whole thing happen.
There was no gun involved.
There was no gun involved.
When the police officers tried going back into the house, Jack warned them against the violation, and this time they listened. Jack's bravado to the face of the police officers showed that he knew his rights and was not going to let them get away with anything. The police officers detained Michael and charged him with interfering with an arresting officer, failure to identify himself, and disorderly conduct. However, these charges were dropped. Michael later filed a lawsuit against Park City for violating his and Jack's civil rights. This resulted in 3 police officers being found guilty by IA, and Sergeant Cameron Thor, the one who forced himself inside the house, lost his job. In this next case, police officers tried to arrest this teen for a bogus DUI charge. On August 28, 2022, 19-year-old Taven Galanakis, a freshman and college athlete at William Penn University, is pulled over by police officers for having his bright lights on. Taven explains that his headlight is out but takes responsibility for his actions. He didn't know that having bright lights on in the city is illegal. Officer Winters asks Taven for his license and registration. After that, he asks Taven to step out of the car. Officer Winters wants to do sobriety tests on Taven since he had fumbled a lot when getting his license and registration. Taven immediately asks for a breathalyzer test, but Winters refuses.
When I say begin, I want you to estimate the passing of 30 seconds. Close your eyes and tilt your head back, okay?
Estimate the pass in 30 seconds?
Yes, sir.
Can I count out loud?
If you want.
1.
Any questions?
Taven explains that he had not drunk anything that night, but he agrees to tests, which he passes. Winters is not convinced and has Taven blow into a breathalyzer. The result is 0, meaning that Taven is sober. Expecting to be let go, Taven is horrified when he gets Miranda'd. The officers then ask Taven whether he smokes weed.
What? Why do you think it's tonight? Why do you think I smoke? I blew 0, so now you're trying to think I smoke weed. That's what's going on. You can't do that, man. You really can't do
Absolutely, I can.
that. Is he allowed to do that? Yes, he is. So I blow 0 and you smoke drugs now.
At this point, Taven realizes that he has passed the breathalyzer test and the officers are trying to get him for smoking weed. He claims what the officer is doing is illegal and refuses to accompany him to the station. He is handcuffed and taken in for a drug test, which he passes. Taven is so angry at this and is currently pressing charges against Newton, Iowa police. In this next case, police officers found themselves in a bid against an unrelenting law student and had to Google the law. On September 14, 2023, New Mexico police officers received a call that someone had been seen walking to his dorm room carrying a case of beer. The police officers responding to this call believed it to be a simple, routine call, but when they got to the dorm, they were met with a smug-looking teen who knew the law and would ensure the officers knew that.
Okay.
Is there alcohol in there?
I don't answer questions.
You have an ID with you?
I do.
Okay, can I see it?
You suspect me of a crime?
I do.
Okay, what crime and how can you articulate it?
Minor possession of alcohol.
The police officers told the teen that he was being suspected of having beer despite being a minor and wanted to check his dorm room. The teen refused to answer the officers and also refused to let them search his premises without a warrant. He knew his First Amendment rights and that a warrant was needed to search his room.
You're saying that you want my ID, but right now you or yourself can articulate a crime that I've committed.
Okay.
So
I already explained to you why I'm here.
The officers fumbled over their words, but since they had not seen him with the case of beer, the teen knew they couldn't get into his room. The officers asked for his identity and even had to Google the law so they could properly communicate with the teen. Eventually, they found out that they had no grounds to detain the teen or search his room. They demanded that the teen give them his ID or else they would arrest him. The teen gladly obliged, knowing that he had grounds for litigation should he want to sue. The police officers left the dorm room and could hear the teen's friends celebrating him for being brave. If he had beer, he sure deserved one after this ordeal. This police chief thought he knew more than this teenager, but boy was he wrong. On September 17, 2022, police officers received a disturbance call from Police Chief Cecchini. Cecchini explains that he was in his home when he heard noise coming from the parking level of his apartment complex. He had seen 2 teenagers destroying property and told them to leave. However, one of them had threatened to beat him. Cecchini then came downstairs and jabbed the teen with the flat part of his flashlight. Under normal circumstances, the teens would be charged with destruction of property. But instead, something more shocking was revealed. It turns out that that is not what happened at all. Cecchini had walked to the parking lot, hit a traffic cone, and then jabbed the teen, threatening to beat him up and then throw him in jail. The teen knew what battery was, so he asked his friend to call the police. Cecchini then showed the teen his badge, arguing that he was well within his rights to act the way he did. When he saw that the teens were not relenting, Cecchini started provoking them so they would punch him.
You're kissing assault me. You want to make out? I'll make out with you right now. I swing both ways, bro.
The teens claimed that disturbing the peace is not a crime. They knew better and refused to leave the ground until the police officers came. Of course, the officers sided with their chief, but luckily, one of the teens was recording the entire exchange. Once the video went public, Cecchini explained himself, saying he felt threatened, but the long arm of the law caught up with him. Cecchini was charged with assault and battery and is no longer the chief of police. It is important to remember that just because you've been entrusted with protecting the law doesn't mean you know everything. Once in a while, you'll find someone who knows more than you do. After all, Knowledge supersedes ignorance.